hope that the next few minutes I can provide you guys some value as you think about adding to your team. And even though the government says that the job market, last jobs report was down a little bit, it's still a very hot market. So, for tough positions or skilled positions in just about every area that we recruit, for sure, it's still a pretty tight market. So you got to be good. So just quickly, I'll give you a quick overview of Broadreach. 10 seconds here. We're 13 people. My team's all ex-practitioners, meaning they were VPs and directors in all different areas of business, in different segments of business, in sales and software and IT and program management and merchandising and marketing, all over the place. So we're a fairly agnostic group. We work with a lot of different types of businesses, from C-suite down to individual contributors in a lot of different areas. My business is both retained search and contract work, so staff augmentation or kind of short-term employees or part-time kind of stuff. So that's it. We're all over the country, and that's who we are. So my thought here was that kind of share with you guys just some of the specific tactics of, you've got to hire somebody, and how am I going to do it? Right? I'm hearing that the market's busy, or it's crazy, or it's easy, or it doesn't matter what you're hearing about the market, because it's going to be what it's going to be at whatever time it is. So it's usually never easy. So just wanted to give you some tactics about how to think about what should we do. We're gonna hire somebody. Let's figure out what are the steps. So I'd say start with defining the position. What's specifically, put some time into writing a good job description. Job descriptions are always the same. They talk about the company, they talk about the role, they talk about the required skills. Try and stand out when you do this, right? So you're gonna write about yourself, sell yourself, right? Don't just talk about the basics of the company. Read a bunch of job descriptions, and you're gonna come across ones that you'll find to be really, really good, and you'll find other ones that sound really, really flat, like they were written by somebody that just didn't care. Talk about the role high level. What's the business goal for the role? Don't just talk about the tactics and the things that are going to happen. What's the person going to be expected to accomplish in the role? And then, get into the specifics of the required skills. I'd kind of recommend that you start with the most, this is pretty obvious, but start with the most important. What are the things that are absolutely necessary to be able to do the job well? And then as you go down your job description, you can sort of ease back to things that are more nice to have. I think another thing, especially for all of us EOers, interview and define, if you haven't defined your core values, very worthwhile project to go through. Define your core values, meet with your team, decide who you really new candidates. You really want to interview for these skills. And I don't know if you guys, you guys hear me all right? I just got a note that said
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. I was just saying my connection was unstable. So interviewing for core values is super important, right? You want to, if your team really is all sort of bought in on your core values and the culture of your company, is super important. It should be. Really got to find ways to interview for those core values and make sure that you're finding the same like-minded kind of people to be joining your team. Otherwise, you're going to screw your culture up. And building the culture is hard enough, as we all know. I think it's important to get consensus or input from the team above the position, below the position, peers to the position. Like take a look at the whole team, talk to them after you've built your job description and say, hey, even if they're not hiring manager, or they're lower level, get opinions from everybody and say, hey, this is the job description I just put together. I want to see what you guys think about this. Do you think I'm on track or not? From your position, what do you think we really need? Every hire in companies of our size is pretty critical and can make big changes, as you all know. So next, kind of get into defining the compensation. By the way, if any of you guys have a question during this, just shout it out. I'm not looking at the chat, but if something comes up in the chat or whatever somebody wants to ask a question or interrupt me, I'm trying to go as fast as I can so we can have time at the end and you guys can ask questions then. But interrupt if you like. So compensation, we get questions about compensation all the time. We tend to do a lot of sales recruiting, especially in building sales teams and all go-to-market teams. And, one of the things I always tell senior executives is when you're building your compensation plan, first and foremost, it sounds ridiculously simple, but what is the business need? And take what the business need is and build that into the compensation for the role that you're addressing. So what's the outcome going to be from the role? How does it affect the business? And then steer the comp to that.
John, can you give an example? Can you give an example of that? Like, for example,
sure. So like, I don't know, like say in a sales management role, pretty simple, right? The goal, or say, no, that's too obvious. Let's say digital marketing role, right? You build, you're in a land grab situation with a fairly early stage startup, and the digital marketing person's, scorecard or metrics one of them should certainly be new logos. How are we getting new logos, or how are we getting new logo leads, or whatever that metric is. Build a portion of their comp plan such that they're bonused on that number. And my recommendation would be, don't do it annually. Do it in shorter chunks, quarters or months, such that carrot's always in front of them. Sometimes you're going to find, strangely, that not everyone is motivated by money. Nobody on this call, but and then things become a little more difficult. But if you have money motivated kind of employees, which most people are, I would say build that plan with your scorecard in mind, and think about how to shape the comp plan such that the people are bonused, and the more important the role is for the targets, like a sales role or sales management role or whatever, bend that or build the plan specifically to focus on those outcomes.
John, we do have a few more questions in the chat. I figure if I just call it the name, you guys want to ask quickly, just that'd be great. Dave, you want to kick us off for a minute?
Oh man, I got a whole bunch of questions. Okay. Let's start with this one. John, when we post position, we try to go to industry specific job postings, but sometimes we make the mistake of just posting something on LinkedIn. And I think the last position we posted on LinkedIn, we literally got like 1,200 applications.
Yep.
And in there we put like this qualifier of like, hey, send a video, or a short video telling us why you think you're a good candidate. And we probably get out of those 1,200, we probably got 8 videos. And so part of me feels like I'm missing out on good candidates if I only look at the people that submitted a video. But on the other hand, those are the only people that actually followed instructions too. So it just seems extremely inefficient. Let's assume I wanted to go a DIY route and not hire a firm like Broadreach to find us a candidate. Like we just want to hire like a $60,000-$80,000 hire. Like, where do you do that effectively?
So let's 2 more slides.
And what tactics? What tactics should we use?
Yeah, where to hunt. So we'll go. I will definitely answer that, and very good points to bring them up specifically. Let's just jump to anything specifically about position first, and then and Dave, I'm definitely going to answer that. I'm just going to do it in 2 slides. Any questions about defining a position, writing a job description, how to get that done? If you're not using AI to do that, it's super useful, right? You can take You can literally talk to Copilot and say, hey, I need to hire a CFO. I need them to have background in healthcare. I need them to be a caring, kind person. They have to be excited about this kind of a company. You can literally talk to the thing like that, and it will start you off with a pretty good job description and gives you someplace to start with. And if you're anything like me, like being in college, staring at a blank piece of paper was probably the scariest part of the whole class. So it's good to get that thing kicked off. Hey, let's just talk about process for a minute here. How are we doing on time? So I'm literally starting. This is super simple, like defining the process. Now you have your job description written. You got your team kind of all behind, like, okay, we're going to go hire whatever the position is. Think about, when do you want this person to start? This is really, this stuff sounds silly, but it's important, right? So let's say it's this time of year right now. You might be thinking, okay, we're not really all back from vacations and people taking time off until after Labor Day. And we really probably need a week or two to get through all of our internal meetings before we have that set. So let's target September 15th. If September 15th or 17th or whatever is your optimal start date, then you got to start thinking backwards to figure out what kind of timeline you're going to build. You want to think about how many interviews is it going to take when you're setting up your interviews. So you want to define, like, are we going to have 3 interviews? CEO, CFO, COO, all going to interview this person. I'll do them separately. Are we going to do them teams or individual? Are we going to start with an individual meeting, kind of vet the person quickly with a half-hour phone call, and then move into a longer process or whatever? That's super important to figure out ahead of time. Do you want to use any testing? A lot of our clients and myself for Broadreach, we use the predictive index. So there's tons. I mean, I could go on and on and on about PXT and PI and DISC and whatever. There's a million different tests. I feel like they are valuable, and a lot of my very successful clients and some very big businesses use testing really, really regularly. So think about who are the people that you want to meet this person, and when you're defining that, you got to think about who's going to touch them and interact with them most, or even at all, right? And Google's done some studies on the fact that, meeting more than 6 people or having a bigger than 6-person interview team probably is a waste of time, which I agree with. And 6 even feels like a lot most of the time. This is important. Thinking about what questions you're going to ask, especially if you have junior people on your team that are going to be interviewing people. Define some of these questions ahead of time and think about, are you going to be asking behavioral questions? You got to have technical questions. Depends on what kind of a role it is, but asking people, and if anybody wants ideas about various kinds of questions, you could, I don't know, poke me afterwards or something if you need some help with defining specific questions for a role. But behavioral questions are really useful for certain things. Different technical questions, sometimes putting a problem in front of somebody and asking them to solve it. Creating pressure sometimes is good. It just depends on the role. So there's a lot of sort of various things to think about, but defining them up front's important. So, are you going to meet these people in groups? Are you going to do it individually? You're going to have the candidate present. One of the things, I have a client that's I feel like they have a very good best practice of having everyone present to them something that they have in the kind of, it's the last phase of their interview. They'll have the remaining team. So they have the leadership that's hiring the person, and then they have the remaining team meet with this candidate, and the candidate will present to them their background, right? I went to high school here, I went to college here, and then I got this job and this job and this job, and now I'm going to show you in my last role, this was a project that I worked on, and this is how I was involved in it and how it went and where it went. And I think that's a really, really good process. A lot of companies try and have candidates, especially like salespeople or marketing folks, learn about their product, the new company's product, and present that back to the leadership. Personally, I feel like that's a little bit of a waste of time. Much better to have somebody focus their effort and energy on presenting something that they've done in the past. They're going to be more comfortable with it. It's going to be more natural for them. It's going to look more like how they will look when they're working for you, and they can focus their energy on your questions and everything else, but it gives the company a good chance to sort of see somebody presenting to a group, how they answer questions. Do they get nervous? Do they not get nervous? Are they effusive? Are they not? How do they react to some level of stress? I think it's a really good best practice, and that company's incredibly successful, and over $1 billion in revenue. So feedback, you got to think about that. How you're going to build your feedback loop, and how's it going to work? Something that companies frequently forget is to follow up with people that they're not going to hire. So like Dave mentioned earlier, I got 400 people or eight people sent in videos. Anybody that takes the time to write a video or build a video and send it in as part of their application, they certainly should get some kind of a message back. Hey, I really appreciated your effort and time. At this point, we have somebody else that's a little closer fit in background, but we loved your submission and I'd love to stay in touch over time. Giving that candidate sort of a white glove experience is super important, because you don't know who they know, and you don't know when you're going to want to go back and maybe hire that person again, or their friend, or whatever else. And markets are much smaller than people think they are. When people hear about candidate experience that sucks. So don't be one of the companies that provides kind of a bad experience. Market's hot, no matter what the government says. Moving quickly is important. A lot of companies will say, hey, I want to make sure I see 5 people before I pull the trigger. Personally disagree with that. I think if you're into 1 or 2 or 3 people and you feel like you found the absolute perfect one and everyone on the team agrees, hire them. Another, giving an awful lot of advice. This is the most non-Gestalt presentation ever, but don't deviate from your process. Once you've built this process, especially if it's proven to be successful once or twice, there'll be something that somebody will blow, like they blew their PI or their process, or they blew the presentation part, but everybody really likes them. Stick to your process and stick to your gut, because you're probably almost always right. And then the last one there is just that make sure your onboarding is super efficient and professional, right? That first week or 2 is critical, because a lot of times a person that's especially just employed from somewhere else, they left the company to go join yours, they're still getting pounded by, other companies and places they were interviewing. And if the onboarding process starts to feel like a miss, we see it all the time where somebody will start somewhere and then we hear from a company, we hired this guy and he ended up, working here for a week, and then he went back to another offer that he got earlier because he didn't like the way that we started him off. Any questions about process? Actually, maybe should I just, I'll just answer questions at the end, might be faster. So where do we look? How are you going to go find this person? Use your network. You obviously want to target the same roles at other companies that do what you do. Tell people what you want, exactly what you want. So when you're speaking to your friends, you see Jeff Plankins at the next EO event, don't tell them you just want an accountant. Tell them exactly what you want. I want somebody with these particular software tools that lives in this particular area, and I need them to make about XYZ kind of money. Like, tell people, just get used to telling people exactly what you want. You'd be very surprised about, the human brain is better than LinkedIn in every way when it comes to making matches. And somebody's going to hear you at some point and say, oh, I know exactly the person you should talk to. They're fantastic. And you'll get the right one sometimes. Tell everybody on your existing team to spend time brainstorming. Where do these people work? Maybe they don't work in a specific, industry that's competitive to you, but the same skill set may exist somewhere else. So maybe in part of your OTM or whatever, sit down and do a little brainstorming about where some of the people could be that would work on your team. Scour your own LinkedIn network for yourself and your team. Look back at all your first connections and see who people know that would be useful to reach out. And obviously personal introductions are going to be a lot better than just sending somebody a note. So So depending on the role, you can run ads, job postings like LinkedIn, Indeed, Dice. I mean, there's zillions and zillions of choices. Look at the types of roles that exist on that particular platform before you spend money on running an ad, and see if there are similar sorts of roles. So then, choose the right spot and be selective. Like Will was just talking about making people run or submit a video. It's pretty good, right? Because you're going to get inundated with zillions of submissions when you run an ad. People will apply from all over the world that aren't qualified, and the more selective you can be, or gates that you can put in front of them, I don't think that's bad, because it's going to be it'll save you some time. At some point you may decide, should I go to a search firm? Why would I do that? Sorry, it's going to be a matter of, do I have time to do this? Do I need help defining some of these steps? Do I need help building comp plan? Do I need help looking at the market? If any of those kinds of things are true, maybe you want to go to a search firm. Typically, like for us, we'll fill a spot inside of 6 weeks, almost all the time. Be as fast as 4, sometimes as long as 8, but it's almost always inside of 6 weeks. And just in terms of cost, you can expect to pay, usually around 25% of somebody's base salary. The other thing is, I think if you're looking for really senior people, self-serving statement, but going to search opens up access to a bunch of people that you probably wouldn't get access to. And certainly, the only people that are reading job ads or would apply to job ads are people that are looking for jobs or unemployed. So that's, that kind of limits your market, as opposed to poking people that are really out looking. So that's it for me. I'll give you guys a chance to ask some questions. It took a little longer than I thought.
We probably have time for one question. Anyone have the courage to unmute and ask one last question?
Nobody.
All right. Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much. It was a great presentation. Took a ton from it. We're really looking forward to everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We're looking forward to the next one. Again, it's the first Tuesday of every month, 8 to 8:30 a.m. And I hope to see you there. Thanks so much.
Good job, John.
Thanks,
Adam.
guys. See ya.